Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I was in Baton Rouge for a 3-day work conference last fall. I'm a marketing consultant, and my company had booked me into a modest but clean hotel just off the interstate. Nothing fancy, but it had a continental breakfast and decent reviews. I flew in late on a Thursday and didn't have time for much except ordering room service and setting an early alarm. I remember feeling weirdly tired that night, like jet lag had hit harder than usual, even though it was just a 2-hour flight. I double-checked the deadbolt before getting into bed, something I always do when I travel alone, but didn't think much of it. It was just another work trip. Same rental car, same PowerPoint, same corporate pleasantries. It was a little after midnight when I heard the banging. Not knocking, banging like someone was throwing their whole weight against the door. At first I thought it was the room next to mine, but when I sat up and listened, it was clearly coming from my door. I froze. It was that instinctual fear, like something primal in my chest just lit up. A woman's voice followed, fast and panicked. "Please, please, open up! He's gonna kill me!" I hesitated. Everything in me said not to move, but the way she said it, raw, breathless, like she was really running from someone, it cut right through the fear. I cracked the door with the latch still on, and there she was, barefoot, hair matted with sweat, makeup smeared down one side of her face. She couldn't have been older than 30. "Please, just let me in. My ex found me, he's here. I saw him watching my window." She kept glancing behind her like she expected someone to lunge out of the darkness. I didn't think. I just undid the latch and let her rush inside. She immediately locked the door behind her and pressed her back against it, catching her breath like she'd just sprinted a mile. I asked her if she'd called the cops, and she shook her head. No signal. I tried. "Can I just stay here for a little while? Just until morning?" I didn't sleep after that. She introduced herself as Jenna. She said she had checked into the same hotel earlier that day after leaving her apartment 2 towns over, claiming her ex-boyfriend had been harassing her for weeks. Her hands trembled as she talked, and I noticed a cut on her forearm she said came from trying to climb out of her bathroom window. I offered her a bottle of water and asked again if she wanted me to call the police, but she said no. Too risky, she told me. If he knows I talked to the cops, he'll do something worse. It didn't sit right with me, but she looked so scared that I didn't push it. I just figured I'd stay up and make sure she was okay. Looking back now, I should have listened to my gut. Around 3 a.m., Jenna finally dozed off sitting up in the armchair by the window. I stayed in bed half awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept circling the same thoughts. Why hadn't she gone to the front desk? Why didn't she have a phone? Something about her story wasn't adding up, but I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe I'd watched too many crime documentaries. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had let a stranger into my space without really thinking it through. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, turned it to silent, and texted my sister just in case, something like, "Hey, random, but there's a girl hiding in my room. I'll call you tomorrow, just in case." Around 5 a.m., I finally drifted off for what felt like 20 minutes. When I opened my eyes again, the chair was empty. I sat up instantly. My first thought was maybe she had left, but then I heard the shower running. The bathroom door was shut, and faint music was coming from inside. That's when I noticed something else. Her purse was sitting on the floor near the chair, slightly open. I don't know what got into me, but something told me to look. I crouched down and gently tilted it just enough to peek inside. Right on top of her wallet and keys was a small kitchen knife. No sheath, no cover. Just loose in the bag, blade pointed toward the bottom like it had been tossed in. My chest tightened, and everything in me screamed that this had gone from weird to dangerous. I stepped back quietly and sat on the edge of the bed trying to figure out what to do. I didn't want to overreact, but I also didn't want to end up on the morning news. I thought about grabbing my things and leaving while she was still in the bathroom. But what if she heard me? What if she came out? The shower turned off. I barely had time to sit up straight and pretend I hadn't seen anything before the door opened. Jenna came out, her hair damp, wrapped in a towel like this was just some normal sleepover. She looked at me and smiled. "Thanks for letting me crash. I feel 1,000,000 times better now." I didn't respond right away. I forced a small smile and nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Glad you're okay." She sat back down in the chair like nothing was wrong. That's when she looked at me, really looked at me and said, "You didn't call anyone, right?" Her tone was soft, but her eyes were sharp now. Cold, like all that panic from earlier had burned off and left something else behind. I lied. I told her I hadn't. She stared for another second, then nodded and leaned back in the chair. "Good. I just need to get out of here today. I can't stay in this state. You have a car, right?" That was the moment it shifted from uncomfortable to terrifying. I didn't answer her right away. My throat felt dry, and I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. She kept going like it was already decided. "We'll leave after breakfast. You can drop me somewhere quiet just over the border. No one will be looking for me there." She was talking with this eerie calm now, like we'd been friends for years, like I'd already agreed. I kept nodding, pretending to be on board, but inside I was panicking. I had no idea what she was running from or if she had done something much worse than she claimed. And the knife. I couldn't stop thinking about the knife. I excused myself to go grab ice from the hallway, and the second I closed the door behind me, I walked straight to the elevator and pressed the button like my life depended on it. I didn't take the car. I left everything in the room, laptop, suitcase, even my charger, and walked barefoot across the lobby to the front desk. I told the night clerk that there was a woman in my room who wasn't supposed to be there, and that I was scared for my life. To his credit, he took one look at my face and called security. They walked me to the manager's office and told me to wait. I sat there for 20 minutes that felt like hours. Eventually, a police officer showed up. I gave my statement, every detail I could remember. They went up to the room 308, but Jenna was gone, just vanished. The door was unlocked, the chair still pushed back from the wall, and my suitcase half-packed on the bed. But no sign of her, not even the knife. I filed a full report, and the officer said there had been no registered guest under that name. No one matching her description had checked in. I don't even know how she got a room key to begin with. The hotel said maybe she was squatting, maybe she knew someone on staff. But they never found her. I ended up flying home that afternoon. I couldn't sleep for days after. I kept replaying it all, how close I came to driving away with her, how easily she got me to trust her, how calm she became when she thought she had control. To this day, I still don't know who she really was or what she had done before knocking on my door. But I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't left that room when I did, if I had gone along with it. Sometimes I check news reports from the states nearby, looking for stories that sound even remotely familiar. I haven't found anything, just silence, and honestly, that scares me even more. I used to drive long-haul deliveries through the South, mostly between Texas and Georgia. I've had weird encounters before, shady gas stations, strange people asking for rides, but nothing that ever made me feel truly unsafe. This happened about 2 years ago in Mississippi. I don't remember the exact highway, just that my GPS lost signal for a good 30 minutes, and I ended up turning onto a narrow back road that didn't even look paved in some parts. I figured I'd stop at the next place I saw to ask for directions or maybe grab a snack and use the restroom. I wasn't in any kind of rush. It was a slow delivery day, and I'd planned to rest overnight anyway. It was late afternoon when I saw a small sign that said Country Motel General Store. The building looked worn down, but not abandoned. Think wooden siding, dusty windows, a flickering open sign. The kind of place where the air smells like old wood and cigarettes as soon as you walk in. There was a man behind the counter, maybe in his 60s. with this leathery skin and a trucker cap. He didn't smile, just stared at me like he hadn't seen anyone in weeks. I asked if he had any rooms, and he nodded, said, "One left." Then he pointed to a door at the back and mumbled something about signing a guest book later. I was too tired to think much of it. I just wanted a break. After I dropped my stuff in the room, which was a total time capsule from the 80s, by the way, with stained curtains and a tube TV that barely worked, I went back into the store to grab some chips or something. That's when things started to feel weird. The guy was still behind the counter, but now he seemed more alert. He asked me if I wanted something real good, then said, "We keep the good stuff in the back freezer. Come take a look." I laughed politely and said I was just after something simple, but he insisted. Twice. "Better snacks in the freezer," he said, not smiling. "You'll like what we've got back there." His tone was off, too calm, like it was rehearsed or something. I started looking around more carefully. That's when I noticed a dark smudge on the floor behind the counter, like a reddish streak going from one end of the linoleum to a mat near the back. I couldn't tell if it was old grease or something worse. But the smell hit me next. Not strong, but faint. This sickly sweet rotting odor coming from behind a heavy steel door near the fridges. It didn't match anything else in that place. My stomach tightened. I mumbled something about needing to make a call and stepped outside, pretending to check my phone. That's when I decided I wasn't staying there another minute. I went straight back to my room, grabbed my duffel, and didn't even bother locking the door behind me. I remember feeling this sharp instinct, like something deep in my gut was telling me to get out now. I walked as fast as I could across the lot to my truck, trying not to look like I was panicking. But the second I got in and turned the key, I saw the guy come out of the store and just stand there. No wave, no question, no smile. He just watched me. And the worst part? He didn't seem surprised at all that I was leaving, like he knew it might happen. I didn't stop driving until I hit the next real town with a gas station and cell reception. I didn't even feel safe until there were actual lights around me and people I could see. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe the smell was just spoiled meat or something, and the guy was just a weirdo, not a threat. But I couldn't shake how wrong everything had felt. That quiet pressure to look in the freezer, the weird guest book I never signed, the blood-like stain behind the counter. None of it sat right. I slept in my truck that night in a well-lit lot. I wasn't about to check into another motel anytime soon. A couple days later, I was sitting at a diner outside of Jackson, scrolling local news while waiting on my food. That's when I saw a headline about a missing person. A young woman, college age, last seen driving through the area I had just come from. Her car had been found abandoned on the side of the road, not far from a place described as an old country motel with a general store attached. My blood ran cold. The article didn't mention anything else, just that police were asking anyone with information to come forward. I didn't want to get involved, but I couldn't stop thinking about that freezer, that smell, and how that guy had acted like me leaving early wasn't a surprise at all. I ended up calling the tip line and told them everything. The location, the smell, the stain, the guy's name if it was real. I saw Earl on a sticker near the register, and how he kept trying to get me into the back. They took my statement, but I never heard anything else from them. No follow-up, no confirmation. A week later, I tried to look the place up again, but it was gone from Google Maps. The satellite view still showed the building, but there was no listing, no phone number, nothing. Like it had never been there. I've gone through every possibility in my head, but none of it explains what I saw, or what I almost walked into. What really messes with me is how close I came to opening that door. If I had been a little more tired, a little less alert, I might have just gone along with it. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I had followed him to that freezer. Would I have ended up like that girl? Would I have even made it out? The whole thing keeps playing in my head at night sometimes, especially when I'm on dark roads alone. I'll never forget the way that man stared at me when I drove off. Not angry, not confused, just still, like he was already thinking about who'd come next. I haven't told many people about this. Some would probably say I imagined it or made it sound worse than it was, but I know what I saw. That smell wasn't just old meat. I've worked in food service before. I know the difference between something expired and something dead. And no one tries that hard to get you to look at snacks. No one. It was like he didn't care about selling me anything. He just wanted me back there. That's what still gets to me. After that trip, I changed routes. I don't drive through Mississippi anymore unless I absolutely have to. I don't trust country motels either. Not the small ones off the road where no one would hear you scream. People think those places are just old and dusty, maybe a little creepy, but I've learned that sometimes they're more than that. Sometimes they're places where things happen, and no one ever talks about it. No reviews online. No cops that call you back. Just a dot on the map that quietly disappears. To this day, I have no idea what was really behind that freezer door. I never found out what happened to the missing girl either. The news just stopped talking about it. But I know what I felt that day, and sometimes when I think too hard about it, I wonder if I ever really escaped, or if I was just lucky enough to get away before it was my turn. Either way, I'm done pretending it didn't happen. That place was real. That man was real. And I'm telling this now because someone else might find themselves standing in front of a door that smells wrong. Trust your gut. I did. And I think it saved my life. I was 17, a high school senior, and honestly, life back then revolved around two things: dance and my little group of friends. We were all part of a competitive dance team from a small town in Ohio, and that weekend we had traveled to Indianapolis for a regional competition. It was one of those cheap trips where the school budget barely covered gas and rooms at a rundown 2-star hotel. I remember being excited, not just for the competition, but for the freedom of spending the weekend away from our parents. We were packed 3 to a room, and I shared mine with Taylor and Mariah, my best friends since middle school. That first night, after a long rehearsal, we were goofing around in the room, playing music too loud and eating vending machine junk like it was gourmet. Our room was on the 2nd floor, near the far end of the hallway, with a dusty view of the back parking lot. Across from us, maybe 3 or 4 steps away, was another room that seemed empty at first. But around 7 p.m., as we were getting ready to head downstairs for dinner, I caught a glimpse of someone standing just inside that doorway. A man, mid-40s maybe, with greasy hair pulled into a loose ponytail and a faded red flannel. He didn't look at us directly at first, just stood there, 1 foot inside the room, the other barely on the threshold, like he couldn't decide whether to come out or not. When our door opened and the hallway light hit him, that's when he turned and looked straight at me. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't a curious glance or even a rude stare. It was like he was memorizing me. I didn't say anything to the girls at first because, honestly, I wasn't sure what I saw. Could have been some tired trucker or a janitor or just a random guest. But even when we came back up later after dinner, he was there again. Same position, same weird energy. This time he didn't retreat into the room when we walked past. He stayed in the doorway, eyes locked on our door until we closed it. That night we joked a little about it. Mariah made some crack about how we were finally interesting enough to have a stalker. But the vibe had shifted. We moved the little chain lock across and even shoved a chair under the knob before going to sleep. It was one of those things you do just to feel safe, even if you're not totally sure why you feel unsafe. I woke up to the sound of the door handle rattling, like someone was testing it slowly over and over again. It took me a second to realize it wasn't a dream. The room was completely dark except for the soft orange glow from the street lamp outside filtering through the curtains. I sat up slowly, heart pounding, trying not to make any noise. Taylor was snoring lightly, but Mariah had stirred too, blinking at me from the other bed. The handle jiggled again, then stopped. A few seconds later, there was a low thud, like someone was pushing their weight against the door, gently but deliberately. I held my breath. The chair under the knob creaked slightly but didn't move. We stayed frozen like that for what felt like 10 full minutes. No footsteps, no more rattling. Just that awful silence pressing in on us from all sides. I was clutching my phone under the blanket, not even thinking about calling anyone, just holding it like some kind of safety net. Eventually, I whispered to Mariah, asking if she heard it too. She nodded, eyes wide, and mouthed, "Don't open it." Taylor, by some miracle, kept sleeping. I don't know how. After a while, we convinced ourselves it had passed. Maybe it was someone drunk who got the wrong door. Still, I barely slept that night, jolting awake at every creak from the hallway. Morning came, and everything felt fake under the daylight. We joked about it while brushing our teeth like it had been some weird shared dream. But when I bent down to pick up my shoes near the door, I noticed something that made my stomach flip. The chain lock, it was unhooked. I was the last one to check it before bed, and I know for a fact I latched it. We all stood there staring at it like it had turned into some alien object. That's when Taylor, now finally paying attention, pointed out a small scrape on the inside edge of the door, right near the lock. It looked like someone had wedged something in there and tried to pop it open. We went down to the front desk and tried to explain what happened, but I could tell the girl behind the counter wasn't taking it seriously. She looked maybe 20, chewing gum and barely making eye contact. "You want me to call maintenance?" she asked, like we were complaining about a leaky faucet. I asked if there were cameras in the hallway, and she said she thought so, but only a manager could pull the footage. He wouldn't be in until noon. That day at the competition, none of us danced right. Our heads weren't in it. Every time I tried to focus, I saw that man's face behind my eyelids. That kind of stare doesn't just vanish, it clings to you. After the event wrapped, we went back to the hotel just to pack and get out. But before we left, I convinced Taylor to come with me to the front desk one last time. The manager was there now. Older guy named Dean, who actually seemed to care. We explained everything from the night before, and when I mentioned the hallway camera, his expression changed. He didn't say much, just asked our room number and typed something into the computer. A few minutes later, he took us into a back office and showed us silent footage from the camera across our hallway. And there he was, that same man in the red flannel. At least 4 separate times during the night, he left his room, walked right up to our door, and just stood there. He didn't knock, he didn't pace, he didn't try other doors, just ours. He would stand completely still for a few minutes, sometimes placing his hand on the handle, then slowly turn and disappear back into his room. The footage didn't show him actually trying to get in, but we knew what we heard. When I asked the manager who he was, he hesitated, then pulled up the guest list. The name registered to that room didn't raise any red flags. Stephen K. Something generic. Dean told us he had checked out that morning just before we came down. Left early, no luggage, no checkout at the desk, just slipped away. What really got me was how fast everything was brushed under the rug after that. The hotel refunded us one night, gave us a sincere apology, and asked if we wanted to file a police report. But since nothing technically happened, no break-in, no physical contact, they said there wasn't much they could do. We went home the next day and tried to act like it hadn't changed us, but it had. Mariah started sleeping with her door locked even at home. Taylor quit staying in hotels altogether. And me? I couldn't stop replaying the look in that guy's eyes. That kind of stare that doesn't want to hurt you quickly. It wants to watch it happen slowly. About a week after we got back, I received a message on Instagram from a private account. No profile picture, no bio, just a single message. "You girls dance beautifully." I froze. It didn't say who it was, and when I clicked the account, it had already disappeared. I never told the others. I deleted the message and set everything to private. Even now, years later, I still can't prove it was him. But I know it was. I know because I've never felt watched the way I felt that night. And somehow, even from behind a screen, it was the exact same feeling. It's been 4 years. I'm in college now, living in a different city, and I haven't had any strange messages or run-ins since. Maybe he moved on. Maybe it was random. Maybe it was just one of those terrifying things that happen to people, and you never get an answer. Just a memory that flickers back when a hallway feels too quiet, or a door clicks a little too softly in the middle of the night. I never went back to Indianapolis, and I never stayed in a budget hotel again. Whatever he wanted that night, he didn't get it. And I think about that chair holding the door shut, and wonder how different my life could have been if it hadn't. I'm not proud of this, but I feel like I need to share what happened. I was 23 at the time, living alone about 40 minutes outside of Richmond. I had just moved out of my parents' place a few months earlier, and between work and trying to keep up with bills, I was in that weird space between being responsible and still doing dumb stuff for the thrill. That's how I ended up messaging a girl on this app I'd been using. It wasn't Tinder. It was one of those sketchier ones people don't talk about openly. And yeah, it was obvious she wasn't looking for anything serious. I wasn't either. Her name on the app was Alyssa, and the photos showed this blonde girl, kind of shy-looking, supposedly 21. We messaged back and forth for a couple days, and she eventually gave me an address to meet her at a motel in Petersburg. It was one of those places right off the highway. Red neon sign flickering, 2 floors, all the doors facing the parking lot. The kind of place where people don't ask questions. I got there around 9:30 at night. I parked near the room she gave me. Room 206, second floor, close to the end. There were only 2 other cars in the lot, one beat-up pickup and some old Honda with tinted windows. I sent her a message saying I was outside, and she replied instantly. "Doors open, come in." I remember hesitating for a second because that felt weird. No, I'll be right there. Just come in. But I shook it off. Dumb move. When I opened the door, the room was dark except for the bathroom light spilling into the main area. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, but immediately I knew something was off. It wasn't the girl in the pictures. Not even close. Her hair was darker, maybe dyed. She looked older, probably late 20s, with this really blank expression like she'd been waiting there too long or just wasn't all there. She barely looked at me when I said, "Hey, Alyssa?" She just kind of nodded but didn't get up or say anything else. I stood there for a second awkwardly, and then I heard the sound of the door clicking shut behind me. I turned around, and the guy from the Honda, I recognized the jacket from outside, was standing in front of the door. He didn't say a word. That's when I felt it, this sharp drop in my gut, like my body realized before my brain did that something was really wrong. I pulled out my phone immediately, instinctively trying to call someone, but the screen just froze. No bars, no signal, nothing. I turned the phone off and on again, nothing changed. Meanwhile, the woman just kept staring straight ahead like none of this was happening, and the guy by the door was just there, not moving, not saying anything. I asked what was going on, tried to keep my voice calm, and she finally muttered, "It's fine, you're fine." But she didn't sound convincing. My skin was cold, and my heartbeat was so loud in my ears it made everything else feel muffled. I wasn't even sure if I should run or sit or scream. I just knew I had to get out of that room. I started backing up toward the window, which was half covered by a curtain. The guy didn't move, but I noticed he shifted his weight like he was ready to block me if I tried to bolt. That's when I realized the door was locked from the inside with that deadbolt chain, and he was standing right in front of it. I tried to play it off, said I left something in my car and needed to grab it real quick. The woman didn't even react. The guy just stared at me, and I swear, the silence in that room felt like it was squeezing the air out of me. I walked over to the window like I was just checking something outside, but what I saw almost made me drop my phone. There was someone crouched down next to my car. They weren't even trying to be subtle. They had the driver's side door cracked open, and their head popped up when I looked. That's when panic really set in. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or woman out there, but whoever it was had gloves on and something metallic in their hand. Maybe a tool or something. My mind was racing. Were they trying to disable my car, Plant something, steal it. I didn't know, I just knew I had to move. I turned away from the window and said, louder this time, I'm serious. I left my wallet in the car. The guy stepped forward. Just one step, but it was enough. I didn't wait for anything else. I ran straight toward the bathroom, slammed the door shut, locked it, and flipped the window open. It was one of those tiny ones, the kind you'd never expect someone to fit through, but I didn't care. I squeezed through it like my life depended on it. I landed hard in the alley behind the building. My arm scraped against the brick wall, and my phone fell out of my pocket onto the pavement. I grabbed it and sprinted around the side of the motel, praying whoever was by my car hadn't seen me yet. When I reached the lot, the Honda was gone, just vanished. My car door was wide open, and the glove compartment had been rummaged through. I didn't even check what they took. I jumped in, started the engine, and floored it out of there. I didn't stop until I was back on the main road, with actual lights and people around me. The signal came back as soon as I was a mile away. That alone made my stomach turn. Like they were doing something to jam it. I pulled into a gas station and just sat there with the engine running, trying to process what the hell had just happened. I checked my phone, but the messages with Alyssa were gone, completely wiped. The app still showed our chat, but everything from that night was erased. Her profile was gone too. No trace of the room number, no screenshots, nothing. I didn't even know how to report it because I technically hadn't been robbed, not really. I kept thinking about the way she looked at me, not scared, not guilty, just empty, like she'd done this before, or worse, like she wasn't really involved, just bait. I didn't sleep that night. I kept imagining someone still had my info, that maybe I'd see that Honda parked outside my building the next day. For the next couple of weeks, I was paranoid as hell. I parked a few blocks away from my apartment just to see if anyone was tailing me. I checked my car every morning and every night. I even covered the peephole in my front door and slept with a knife under my pillow. No one ever showed up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, unfinished. I didn't tell anyone about what happened. Not friends, not family. Partly because I was embarrassed, but also because I didn't want to deal with the lecture. I kept going over it in my head, trying to figure out if I missed something, if I was targeted or just unlucky. I started reading about phone jammers and tracking devices, and the more I read, the worse I felt. It wasn't just some creepy setup. It was organized. One day, out of sheer impulse, I drove back to that motel in Petersburg. I told myself I was just curious, that I wanted to see if the place even still existed, like maybe the whole thing had been in my head. But it was still there. Same flickering sign. Same layout. Room 206 was open, being cleaned by an older woman in a housekeeping uniform. I asked her if she remembered a guest in that room from 2 weeks ago, and she looked confused. Said the room hadn't been booked in a month, that it had been out of service for repairs until just 2 days ago. I thanked her and left. I don't know if she was lying or just didn't want to get involved, but that moment made everything spiral again. If the room wasn't supposed to be rented, who gave me the number? Who had the key? What still gets me is how smooth it all was. The app account, the timing, the way the guy locked the door like it was muscle memory, the other person outside going through my car while everything was happening inside. It wasn't random. I think they've done this before. Maybe they do it a lot. Maybe someone didn't get out like I did. I still think about that woman sometimes. Her face, her expression. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even pretending to be someone else. She was just there. Present, but not human in the way you'd expect. I've never seen eyes that empty before. I don't know what they were planning, and honestly, I don't want to know. Nothing's happened since then. No strange cars, no more messages, no knocks on my door. It was like it all disappeared the same way it started, out of nowhere. But I still can't explain how my phone signal was jammed or how they got into my car without setting off the alarm. Every now and then, I'll scroll through those apps just to see if Alyssa shows up again. She never does, but once, maybe 6 months later, I saw a profile that looked similar. Different name, different city, Same kind of photos. I didn't click it. I deleted the app and haven't used anything like that since. Whatever that was, whoever they were, I think I got lucky, and I'm not looking to find out what happens when someone doesn't. I'm a 31-year-old nurse from Tennessee, and what happened to me last summer still creeps into my dreams some nights. It was the end of July, and I had just spent the weekend visiting my brother and his wife in Georgia. I had planned to drive straight home that Sunday evening, but halfway through the drive, I hit a wall of exhaustion. I was running on 4 hours of sleep and hadn't eaten since noon. My vision was getting blurry from the road lights, and I knew pushing through would be stupid. So I pulled off near an exit and booked a room at a small roadside motel. Nothing fancy, just one of those old 2-story places with faded paint and ice machines that sound like they're dying. I remember checking in just before 9 p.m. The front desk clerk was a woman in her 60s who barely looked up when I walked in. She handed me the key to room 108 and mumbled something about the soda machine being around the side of the building. The room itself was dated. Yellow walls with peeling corners, a rattling air conditioner in the window, and a stiff floral bedspread that smelled faintly of bleach. But at that point, all I needed was a place to shower and sleep. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and lay down for a few minutes scrolling through my phone. That's when I realized how thirsty I was. It was around 10 p.m. when I stepped outside to get something from the soda machine. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few scattered cars, including an old silver truck parked 2 spots down from mine. The motel lighting was dim, casting orange halos around each bulb, and the air felt heavy, like a storm was lingering just beyond the trees. I walked around the side of the building where the vending machines were, coin purse in hand, and that's when I heard a man's voice behind me, low and hurried. "Hey, excuse me, ma'am. Sorry, I'm locked out of my room. You wouldn't happen to know if the office is still open?" He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, wore a denim jacket despite the heat, and had this unshaven, greasy look like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were jittery, not just tired, but like he was constantly scanning. I hesitated, not because of what he said, but because something about him instantly put me on edge. Still, I didn't want to be rude. I told him I had just checked in and hadn't seen anyone at the desk since then, but I could walk with him to see if the clerk was still around. He nodded, thanked me in a weirdly stiff way, and started walking beside me. Too close. I felt that internal alarm starting to buzz, but I brushed it off. I was just tired, I told myself. Just tired. As we turned the corner of the building, I realized how isolated that side of the lot felt. The soda and ice machines were humming, but other than that, it was dead silent. No traffic noise, no voices, nothing. That silence wrapped around us in a way that made my skin crawl. I started to say something like, "Maybe you should knock on the office door." But before I could even finish the sentence, I noticed he wasn't looking at the building anymore. He was staring straight at me. His whole posture changed. Shoulders tense, hands sliding into his jacket. That's when I saw the blade. Not some tiny pocket knife. This thing was long and serrated like something out of a hunting set. He said real quiet, "You weren't supposed to see anything." My brain couldn't even register what that meant. I stammered, "What? I didn't see anything, I swear." But he stepped forward and shoved me against the wall. The shock of hitting the brick took the wind out of me, and I felt this sharp burn on my left side. I looked down and realized he'd stabbed me. Not deep, but enough for blood to start soaking through my scrub top. I screamed loud and raw and tried to push him off, but he was stronger. He kept repeating that same phrase, "You weren't supposed to see anything," like he was possessed or trying to convince himself. Everything got blurry after that. I think my body went into some kind of survival autopilot. I remember grabbing the edge of the ice machine, trying to use it to swing myself away from him. He raised the knife again, and I honestly thought that was it. I was done. But right then I heard heavy footsteps running up behind us. A man's voice yelled something. "Hey, drop it!" And then there was this metallic clang and a cloud of white dust exploded between us. The guy with the knife stumbled back, coughing, while this other guy, tall, bald, maybe in his 50s, kept slamming a fire extinguisher into the attacker's arm until the knife clattered to the ground. I collapsed to the pavement. My side was on fire, and I could feel my hands shaking uncontrollably. The guy who saved me dropped the extinguisher and knelt beside me, checking if I was conscious, if I could move. I think I said my name, or maybe just hospital. Everything was spinning. Another motel guest had come out and was calling 911. I remember seeing the guy who attacked me curled on the ground, coughing, covered in foam. He didn't look dangerous anymore. He looked pathetic. But even then, I couldn't shake the way he kept staring at me, like I had ruined something for him. The ambulance came fast, faster than I expected for a place that felt like the middle of nowhere. I was taken to the nearest ER with a small puncture wound and a cracked rib from when I hit the wall. The doctor told me I was incredibly lucky the knife didn't go deeper. I barely remember the ride. I was shaking so badly they had to give me something to calm down. I don't think the physical pain even registered compared to the mental fog I was in. I kept replaying his words. You weren't supposed to see anything, trying to make sense of it. I hadn't seen him before, hadn't noticed anything weird earlier that day. But maybe I had seen something without realizing it. A license plate, a room door left open? I'll never know. The police came to take my statement while I was still on a hospital bed. They told me the guy's name was Kevin Bishop. He was a drifter with a long record. Assault, breaking and entering, even a kidnapping charge back in 2015 that got thrown out for lack of evidence. He had checked into the motel under a fake name, no ID. They think he was staying there to lay low after some kind of robbery gone sideways. Apparently, earlier that day, another guest had reported hearing arguing in one of the rooms and a woman crying, but when staff checked, nothing was there. Police later found blood in room 203. They never said whose. I stayed in town for 2 extra days to finish the police report and get stitched up, but the motel refunded my stay, like that would fix anything. I still get goosebumps when I think about how close I came to dying over a soda. The man who saved me, his name was Ronald. He was a trucker passing through, and if he hadn't walked out of his room when he did, I probably wouldn't be here writing this. I sent him a thank you letter a few weeks later, along with a photo of my little nieces. He didn't respond, but I hope he knows he changed someone's life that night. I don't stop at random motels anymore. I don't walk outside alone at night even just to grab a drink. People always say, trust your gut, and I didn't. I pushed that warning feeling down because I didn't want to seem rude or paranoid. Now I'd rather be rude than be dead. And to anyone reading this who works night shifts, who travels alone, or who thinks, it's just a quick stop, what could happen? Please, please be careful. I didn't see it coming, but I felt it, and next time I'll listen. I was in Cincinnati for work, just a short overnight trip to meet with a supplier the next morning. I checked into a business hotel near the airport around 7:30 p.m. Nothing fancy, just one of those mid-range chains with clean lobbies, beige carpets, and vending machines that never work right. I was on the 4th floor, room 417, and I remember being oddly aware of how quiet everything was. Barely saw anyone in the hallway when I got there. I ordered takeout, ate at the desk while watching something on Netflix, then got ready for bed. I was almost asleep when the room phone rang. It was weird because who even uses those phones anymore? I figured it was the front desk, and I was right. The guy on the other end said there was a billing issue with my card and asked if I could come down for a moment to sort it out. I was half asleep, but I didn't think much of it. These things happen, especially with corporate cards. I asked if it could wait until the morning, but he said they needed to fix it before the night audit. The voice sounded normal enough, not robotic or off in any way. Still groggy, I threw on some sweatpants and grabbed my keycard. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have been. When I got to the lobby, there was no one behind the counter. No bell, no signs, just the faint sound of some late-night show playing on a TV in the breakfast area. I waited for a minute, then leaned over the desk and called out a quiet, "Hello?" Eventually, a woman came out from the back office and looked surprised to see me. When I explained that someone from the front desk had called me about a billing problem, she frowned and said no one had made any calls. She was the only one on duty that night, and her log didn't show any issues with my room. That's when something in my stomach turned. It wasn't panic, not yet, but a kind of slow unease, like when your brain picks up on something before your body catches up. I mumbled something like, maybe it was a mistake, and headed back to the elevator, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was someone new at the front desk earlier, maybe a system glitch, whatever. But when I got back to my floor, I saw right away that my door wasn't fully closed. It was open maybe an inch, just gently swaying inward, and the chain lock, which I always put on by habit, was dangling broken off the latch. I froze, like fully stopped in my tracks, just staring at the door. My first thought was that maybe housekeeping had come in for some reason, but it didn't make sense. This was well past midnight, and I hadn't requested anything. I remember just standing there in the hallway for a few seconds, heart starting to pound, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But that chain lock being busted? That was the part I couldn't explain away. I knew I'd used it. I always use it, especially in hotels. And it wasn't just undone, it was snapped. The little metal hook was bent outward like someone forced it. I pushed the door open slowly, standing to the side in case someone was still in there. I don't know what I expected to see, but the lights were still off and everything looked almost the same. My suitcase was still near the desk, the bed looked mostly undisturbed, and the bathroom door was wide open. But I swear to God, the air felt different. Like that weird stillness after someone leaves a room, warm, like breath had just been there. I stood in the doorway holding my breath, listening. No movement, no voices, just the hum of the AC unit kicking on. I grabbed the closest thing I could use as a weapon, a lamp base that wasn't even heavy, and slowly walked through the room, turning on lights as I went. I checked the closet under the bed, even pulled the shower curtain back like I was in a horror movie. Nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there. The chair at the desk was slightly pulled out. I hadn't left it that way. And one of the nightstand drawers was open a couple inches. I didn't even remember opening it at all. That drawer had the Bible and the little notepad, untouched. But it was like someone was looking for something. I wanted to call the front desk again, but my phone was still on the bed where I'd left it, and the room phone just gave me static. That's when the fear really hit me. I felt watched. Not like someone was in the room anymore, but like they had been. Like they were close, maybe still in the hallway, maybe even watching the door to see if I'd come back. I locked the deadbolt and jammed the busted chain as best as I could. I dragged the desk chair in front of the door and sat there with my back against the wall, holding the stupid lamp like it was going to help. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even blink. I waited until the sun started coming up before I even considered moving. I kept listening for footsteps in the hallway, doors opening, anything, but it was dead quiet all night. Around 6:30 a.m., I got dressed and went straight down to the front desk again. A different guy was there now, and when I told him what had happened, he just looked at me like I was confused or making it up. He checked the call logs. Nothing. Said no one on staff called my room, and no one else had reported anything strange on that floor. I asked if they had cameras in the hallway, and he said only in the lobby and elevators. I checked out early, didn't even stay for the free breakfast. I drove straight to a Starbucks a few miles away just to breathe. I remember sitting in the parking lot for almost an hour, trying to calm down, replaying everything in my head. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't gone downstairs? What if I'd ignored the call, or worse, what if I'd come back 5 minutes later than I did? There was no sign of forced entry, no stolen items, no real evidence that anything even happened. But I know what I saw. That door was open, that chain was broken, something was off. I talked to a friend later that day who works in hotel security, and he said sometimes people try to gain access to rooms by impersonating staff, calling guests to lure them out. He said it's rare, but it happens. That thought has haunted me ever since. Whoever it was, they knew I was alone. They knew which room I was in, and they timed it just right, like they were watching me. I kept thinking about how quiet that floor was, how I didn't see a single guest the whole night. It's like I was completely isolated, and someone knew that. It's been a couple years since it happened, and I still think about it every time I stay in a hotel. I double lock everything, prop a chair under the knob, even wedge the luggage rack against the door sometimes. I've never gotten another strange call like that, but I also haven't been able to shake the feeling that someone else was in that room with me that night, just for a few minutes. Long enough to move something, break the lock, and then vanish like it never happened. No one believes me when I tell it, but if you've ever had a moment where your gut tells you something was wrong and you can't prove it, you'll understand why this still messes with me. I'm not sure why I'm sharing this now, but I guess I'm still trying to process what happened. It was about 2 years ago, when I was 32 and going through a pretty rough patch. I had just left a long and toxic relationship, packed whatever I could fit into my car, and drove halfway across the state with my 2 girls, Alyssa, who was 9 at the time, and Lauren, who had just turned 6. We didn't have a place lined up yet, so I booked a cheap roadside motel just outside a small town called Marlow. I figured we'd stay for a few nights while I looked for an apartment and got the girls registered at their new school. It wasn't ideal, but it was all I could afford. The motel itself wasn't the worst I've seen. One of those one-story U-shaped buildings where you can park right outside your room. The sign flickered at night, and the lobby smelled like old coffee and bleach, but the room was clean enough. When I walked in to check us in, there was a man behind the desk who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Early 40s maybe, scruffy beard, grayish skin, and a weird twitch in his left eye that kept catching my attention. His name tag said Ed. I smiled, gave him my name, and he barely looked up from his screen. Then he glanced out the glass door at my car and saw the girls waiting inside. That's when his whole demeanor changed. He asked how old they were, with this crooked smile that immediately made me uncomfortable. I said something like, "They're just kids," and tried to move on quickly, but he kept going, said Alyssa looked mature for her age, and asked if we were staying long. I laughed awkwardly, didn't respond, just grabbed the room key and walked out fast. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe he was just socially weird. But I locked the room tight that night. It was a ground floor unit, close to the back corner of the property, with a big window facing the parking lot. I pushed the armchair up against the window just in case, even though it felt paranoid. The next day, I took the girls into town to check out the local library and see if we could find a grocery store. I didn't think anything was off until we came out of the library, and I saw someone standing across the street near a bus stop, just kind of watching us. He had on a baseball cap pulled low, but I swear I recognized that twitch. It was Ed. He wasn't pretending to wait for a bus. He wasn't on his phone. He was just standing there, staring. I quickly grabbed the girls' hands and walked to the car, telling myself again that it was just coincidence. But that night, I made sure to pull the curtains tight and left the bathroom light on while we slept. The second night was worse. Around 11:30 p.m., I heard what I thought was someone messing with the soda machine outside our room. I sat up in bed, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But then I heard the crunch of gravel, slow footsteps right outside our window. I didn't move. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the silhouette of the armchair pressed up against the curtains. The footsteps stopped. Then came this soft metallic rattle, like someone testing the handle of the window from the outside. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. I didn't want to scare the girls, so I whispered their names and told them to stay in bed while I called the front desk. No one answered. I tried 3 times, and each time it just rang and rang. I finally called 911. I couldn't see outside clearly because the curtains were too thick, but I stayed on the phone, whispering to the dispatcher and praying whoever was out there wouldn't try to force the window open. The cops showed up within maybe 10 minutes. By then, whoever it was had vanished. The officer who came to the door was kind, but he looked skeptical. He walked the perimeter, didn't find anything suspicious, and said it was probably just a passerby or someone from town cutting through the lot. I tried to press him about the man at the front desk, but he just nodded and said he'd make a note of it. The next morning, I went to the lobby to ask for a different room, something closer to the center, maybe near the office. But Ed wasn't there. There was a different woman, maybe in her 60s, who said she was the manager and that Ed only covered the night shift. I asked if there had been any complaints about him, and she immediately got defensive, said Ed was a good guy and that he'd been working there for years. When I mentioned the police being called, she looked surprised, said no one told her anything. I didn't push it further. I just asked for a different room and made up a story about needing easier access for my kids. That afternoon, we went out again, mostly just to kill time and stay out of the motel for as long as we could. I took the girls to a local diner for milkshakes, and when I went to pay, I swear I saw Ed's reflection in the glass behind the register. He was sitting in a car across the street, not even trying to hide it this time. Just parked there, engine running, looking right at us. That was the moment I stopped trying to rationalize anything. Something was seriously wrong. This wasn't awkward behavior or coincidence anymore. It felt like we were being hunted. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew it had something to do with my daughters. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the armchair by the window, a kitchen knife from my bag on my lap, and just waited. The girls were both asleep, curled up in the same bed, totally unaware of how serious things had gotten. Around 2 a.m., I heard the gravel crunch again. My stomach dropped. I turned off the bathroom light and held my breath. Then came the soft, deliberate sound of the window being lifted. Slow, like whoever was doing it was trying not to make a sound. But I had locked it and shoved the chair back in place. The curtains moved slightly from the pressure. I stood up, heart pounding, and shouted, "Get the hell away from here!" loud enough to wake the girls. They both sat up crying as I rushed to turn on every light in the room. I grabbed my phone and called the police again. This time, they took it a lot more seriously. When the officers arrived, they actually caught him, Ed, behind the building near the dumpster. He had gloves on and a crowbar in his backpack. He claimed he was taking out the trash, but the cops weren't buying it. They asked to see the security footage from the motel's cameras, and that's when things got even creepier. The cameras facing the back of the building had been manually disconnected. I packed our stuff before the sun came up. The manager was mortified when she found out what happened, but I didn't want her apologies. I just wanted out. Ed was arrested, though I never found out what came of it. I refused to testify. I didn't want him knowing my full name or anything else that could be traced. We ended up staying at a friend's house in the next town over for a few weeks until I could find a proper place. I enrolled the girls in school quietly, used a P.O. box for everything, and kept a bat under my bed for months after that. To this day, I don't know what his real intentions were. Maybe he was just a creep who fixated on my daughters, or maybe it could have been worse if I hadn't been so paranoid. Either way, I trust my gut now, completely. If something feels off, it probably is. People like Ed don't usually look like monsters. Sometimes they just wear a name tag and smile too wide behind a motel desk.